I know what you're thinking.
You're crazy, man. You're crazy.
Here's the thing. This wouldn't be the first time that I decided to look up in the sky and actually see a UFO. I was actually able to convince a coworker who used to be a skeptic and basically turned her into a believer after we saw two revolving spheres in the sky. But hey, you don't really have to take my word for it, because in this episode, we're going to be going over the 10 most convincing images captured by none other than NASA. And unlike the other NASA UFO episodes that we've published on this channel, I've actually managed to backtrack some of the web addresses for these images so that you, the audience, can check it out for yourself. So, without further ado, let's take a look. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Second Earth Alternative. I say this often, but I'm going to say it and actually really mean it this time. This is going to be an absolutely incredible episode. If you are a skeptic, I honestly believe that this is the one episode that might actually change your mind. I kid you not. I don't know how else to say it. Some of these images are just undeniable. It's just, there's no other explanation. And like I said, I will be providing you with the original web address so that you yourself can check out some of these images. So starting off here, this is actually an image that I got from a viewer that I was able to forensically verify the image as coming straight off his phone. And I thought it was kind of interesting that when I kind of zoomed in, you kind of see what looks like a hole being punched through these clouds. Now, I'm not going to say that this is 100% proof or hardcore evidence, but you know, some of this stuff, it just really in your face. Like, I don't know if you've ever seen the painting Madonna on the Rocks. Take a look at this. I mean, you know, it's not just modern times that people have been reporting these saucer-like objects with lights coming out of them. You see this man and his dog looking straight up at this object. And talking about being in your face, you know, when the CIA started tweeting, talking about documents that were being released, well, all you have to do is just look for the evidence. I went to the CIA website, and as many who have been following this channel knows, we discovered an original document that has not been published before. I had to transcribe 57 pages. Believe me, it was not easy. But on page 11, it basically says here, we're most anxious that further publicity not be given to the information that the panel, was supposed to be a scientific panel, was sponsored by the Central Intelligence Agency. So what is a scientific panel that's supposed to be looking for UFOs or analyzing whether UFOs are real or not? How is it that they're sponsored by the Central Intelligence Agency and that they're anxious when they're writing to the Air Force, that they're anxious that people are going to know that this was, how do you say it, like a faux panel? Something that wasn't scientific by any means. So this is just some of the interesting evidence that I've come across. And look, I used to not be a believer. I'm not kidding. When I was in college, I didn't believe in UFOs. It was only after graduating and having some time to do some research that I realized how unbelievably real this phenomenon is. I thought it was just some kind of mental construct. But when I show you some of these images from NASA, it's just, like I said, it's absolutely undeniable. So I've decided to title all of these images. And so here are the top 10 NASA images that I find absolutely unbelievable. And by the time we get to top 5, like I said, it's just, I think your mouth is going to be gaping. So take a look at this. So this one I've called the Blue Twin. Now at first it doesn't look like much, it just looks like blue little dots. And I'll go ahead and increase the size so you can see it a little bit better. And so it's kind of interesting. It has like a little blue tail. Now, what interested me about this is that this blue twin, well, it wasn't just that image that this thing appears. It also appeared in this image. And let me increase the size as well. And check that out. That looks kind of interesting. It looks like there's some kind of form with a little tail. Maybe it's some kind of... Maybe it's a different phenomenon that I'm not aware of. Maybe it's radiation particles hitting the lens. I can't be certain about this one. But let's move on because the other ones are actually a little bit more clear. So number 9, I call this the 1950 saucer. And the reason is when you zoom into this shot of the moon, you see this little blurry object that looks very close to what we would think of as a flying saucer, something that you see in some of the images shot as far back as 1950s. Let's just zoom in and show you what this looks like when we kind of sharpen it a little bit. And well, there you go, ladies and gentlemen. You can decipher for yourself what you think that is. Number 8, we got the shadow. Now, of all the UFO images, this might be the only one where not only do we have a UFO, something that's unidentified, but possibly a shadow underneath it. Now, you know, I had to look at this image carefully to analyze it, and if you look at the crater, do you see how the crater is lit on the bottom side? So that implies that the lighting is coming from top to bottom. So the shadow position actually does match generally where the light is coming from. And just to kind of zoom in, just to give you a better look, there is the shadow, and there is the strange object that seems like it's racing across the moon. All right, at number 7, we got the craft. This image was taken at the surface of the moon, and on the horizon, you see a white little dot. But let me tell you, this is more than just a white dot. And there's a reason why I call it the craft, because when you zoom in, well, yeah, I don't know how else to say it. It looks unbelievably symmetrical. It looks like, it almost looks like one of those hovercrafts that you take over the Everglades. Either way, it looks pretty anomalous. At number 6, we got the Bob Lazar Effect. Now, the reason why I call this the Bob Lazar Effect is because if you listen to Bob Lazar, he talked about how some of these saucers have this particular configuration of flying. And not that he just described the crafts as sometimes flying, not in the traditional bottom-up way, but in a kind of like horizontal way. He also talked about a kind of like a force field that is around the craft. He says that the craft essentially kind of warps the space around it. And honestly, when I'm looking at this image, that's kind of like what I'm seeing here. If this is not clear enough, let me go ahead and clear that up for you. And this is going to be in black and white because I just did a kind of a channel mixer and just left it at that, so you can clearly see what's happening. So let's take a look. And there it is, ladies and gentlemen. You got the craft, you got that weird kind of black halo around, and it almost looks like it's like shooting something away from the direction of where we would assume it's heading. And now I say the assumption of where it's heading because if this was a force field and it's bending, the implications is that it's heading this way, that it's kind of going against the bend. And though I left that in black and white, number 5, bro, they're watching you. Well, this one, I'm just going to leave it in color. It has the same exact effect, the vertical configuration. You see almost this little kind of weird thing jetting out. And I'm going to do nothing else but just increase the size and show you what this looks like. Well, I went ahead and flipped it. But yeah, you can judge that for yourself. Okay, at number 4, we got the triangle. Now, this one's really interesting because the reason why I call it the triangle is when you take a look at this, well, it looks like just light. It's like, oh, maybe this is a reflection. Maybe this is something, I don't know, just not much. Like, whatever, just like a little light. So it doesn't prove anything. Well, that's why I love this channel mixer, because let me show you what happens in the end when we actually mix with the channel and kind of layer some of these layers on top of each other. Are you kidding me? It looks like one of those like TR3Bs, like that kind of Belgium-like craft with the 3 lights. I don't know, that looks really anomalous. That is extremely, extremely strange. And if you think that's convincing, wait till you get to the top 3. These ones are absolutely stunners. Now, at number 3, we got the undeniable I call this the undeniable because when you look at this image, right, it doesn't look like much, but as you start increasing this size, and we do have a web address for this one so you can check it out for yourself, look what happens here. Now, that is pretty clear to me right away, but if that's not clear enough, let me go ahead and show you what we have here when we process the image. Bam! Are you kidding me? Now, what I found so interesting when I processed this image is really started seeing the three-dimensional shapes protruding out. Let's see if I can go backwards a little bit just to kind of show you. You see that? So once we put a channel mixer, look at that. Look how the shape really starts popping out. And yeah, now you see why I called this the undeniable. I mean, this really looks like exactly how we think of flying saucer from a top-down perspective. All right, and number 2, we got the Black Knight. I kid you not, ladies and gentlemen, in a NASA image captured over the moon, there is this strange object. And when you increase the size of this object, check this out. This is pretty crazy. Bam! Damn. So on the right, you got the Black Knight satellite. Now, if you don't know, this is a satellite that has been apparently orbiting Earth in a polar orbit before anything made by humans had ever done polar orbits. This thing was already known to exist. I found it pretty shocking that when I increased the size, that some of the shapes seem to match very closely, almost as if it's the same object, but just slightly churned at a different angle. And the number 1 image from NASA, and once again, we have the address for you, ladies and gentlemen, to check it out for yourself, is what I call Beem Me Up Scotty. Sometimes you can think that a UFO is just a reflection. Sometimes you can think that maybe it's some kind of ice particle. But I'm going to ask you, what kind of ice particle creates this? And all I'm going to do here is just simply increase the contrast and increase the size. Take a look. What? Now you know why I call this Beem Me Up Scotty, because not do you just have some gaseous, I don't know what this is, something coming out of its rear end, you also have this weird beam coming down towards the direction of Earth. Now, what the hell this is, I've got no idea. All I know is this is coming straight off the NASA archives. Go ahead and check it out for yourself. And if you're a skeptic and you still don't believe it, then please comment on this video what the hell this is. I would love to hear an explanation, because I honestly don't see any other explanation other than extraterrestrial crafts that are not ours, because we don't make things that beam laser-like lights into Earth, or yeah. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, that is the episode for today. I hope you enjoyed some of these NASA images, and yeah, just show it to your friends. Let them know that there's something weird happening, because like I said, there's so many different variations, so many different obvious symmetry that you would have never expected unless you started increasing the size and really taking a look at these crafts carefully. For example, the triangle, which you could have only seen had you actually pulled out the channel mixer. Yeah, it looks like they are watching us. If you have not subscribed, it does help to subscribe, and make sure to press that bell button, the notification bell, so that you get notified of our next episode. And before I leave, I wanted to ask the audience, because we've been talking about making a Mars episode about what the Martians, if there was a civilization in Mars, what they might have looked like. Now, I have my own ideas, though they're very speculative. I do have a general idea of what the Martians may have looked like. I know it sounds absolutely crazy. If the audience has their own sources, their own ideas of what a Martian may have looked like, I would love to hear your thoughts, your ideas, send in your drawings to our email, EaFiles.contact at gmail.com. And that way we can kind of do a comparison for the next episode. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me once again. This is Felipe speaking, signing out.